Welcome to our listing presentation masterclass. We are joined by, and very excited to be joined by our special guest, Julie Powers, who will be working with us as well. So if you want, I don't know if you can pin her if you on your end, but Julie is amazing. She has done 230 listings in her 5-year average. Her best year, closing 75 listings with a total volume of 96 million. So she is wonderful. She focuses heavily on listings and is great at what she does. And we are super excited to have her here today with us. So we are going to both be going through this whole like from start to finish for the listing presentation, from when you should be talking to your clients or the sellers right from the start all the way to the very end with the follow-up and everything in between. A lot of what I'll go through too, I've learned from her and from other powerhouse listing specialists. So she can kind of go through too, like what she, why she does what she does and what she's learned over her many years of real estate. So Julie, I guess if you want to just chime in real quick and I guess say a few things about yourself if you want to. If not, we can get started.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thank you so much for the kind words. You are like really good for my ego, Alex, as this is a second career for me. I made the jump into real estate about 8 years ago. And then for the last 7 years, I've focused primarily on listings. I was averaging about 50 listings a year, but then my best 3 years, I did 65, 67, and 75 listings, back to back to back. So I really just think that through that volume of repetition, I've figured out a couple of things that I just think really resonate. We always have to customize and tailor the service that we provide to our clients. But there's a handful of things in the way we communicate and the way we set ourselves up that I think can be universally applied. So I'm excited to share those things with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. So first, this is kind of just an overview, like I said, of what we're going to talk about: pre-qualifying the seller, why it's important, the pre-listing presentation or packet, and leading up to the listing presentation, the actual presentation or consultation, and then the follow-up plan. So we'll just get right into it. So pre-qualifying, huge. I think if you're not pre-qualifying your sellers, you're doing yourself a disservice. Not only do you have the opportunity to build rapport with them, but you get to figure out if there are any objections ahead of time so that you can come more prepared. You figure out what their motivation is. You know so much about them beforehand that what you can bring to the table and talk about and work your presentation around when you meet them, that if you're not doing this, you are not fully prepared, in my opinion. And I know that a lot of agents aren't doing this pre-qualifying or when they're talking to sellers. They're setting up the appointment. They're saying, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms do they have? Asking them like the simple things about the house, but then they're not going through the nitty gritty with them about, what is the house condition in? Do they have an equity position? What's important to them about the agent that they are choosing to sell their home? Do they have any concerns moving into it? So this is just a few, I wrote down a few things that you need to find out, but that's really, I think it's so important to pre-qualify, and it'll give you a leg up on the competition.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with everything that you said more. It's really important. And I also think that just really, I love that you have here, seeking to understand, because I think it's so critical to really listen to what they're saying and kind of what they're not saying, what their body language is telling you. So what's if you're in person or what they're saying over the phone in a pre-qualifying question, conversation, because sometimes going that extra layer or 2 or even 3 deep all of a sudden just opens things wide up. So, we're looking for 1 floor living. Oh, well, why is that important to you? Well, they answer whatever. And okay, so, who's that in-law suite going to be for or whatever. And then all of a sudden you find out that like her mother had a stroke, she fell, they're moving her in with her, and now all of a sudden, like you just have so much more insight to all that's going on in their life. And you can bring, compassion and empathy to their life, to the moment that they're living in life, to help them with this transaction. And so it's not just about building rapport, like it's really about like just getting into their lives and understanding and appreciating like what is precipitating this move and why, and how that emotionally is resonating with them and their family members.
Yeah, it's about peeling the onion. And I think it also can help you, in my experience too, figure out who may not be motivated and may not be worth talking to. If they're like, oh, my neighbor just got 900,000 and I want to get 900,000 as well. Well, is there any other reason that you're looking to move? Or, well, if we don't get 900, we're not moving. Like there are those people out there that you can weed out and figure out with so you're not going to waste your time either with the pre-qualifying and talking to those sellers ahead of time. And it starts with your actual questionnaire, but it's all about, like what Julie said, going off of that and really peeling the onion, figuring out what their motivation is and what is going on in their life that has them considering making a move. Because no one just picks up the phone most of the time to make a move unless there is something that caused them to do so. So the pre-listing packet, also very important when
Hey,
setting.
Alex, can I stop you really quick? Can I just
Yeah.
ask you, when are you doing the pre-qualifying? How does that fit in? Is that before the pre-listing packet?
It is. It's right when you get the call, or if someone's calling you and asking you to list their house, or if they're asking you to come interview to list their house, they're calling you when they have time. So I typically would do it right there, or if they email me, or if they message me on Instagram, or if I get just a text message, then I'm setting up a time to take 10, 15 minutes to talk to them and go through this questionnaire with them. And then after that is when I'm dropping off the pre-listing packet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm just going to also jump in here, Alex, if that's okay. So if you think about this, a lot of times I've spoken to agents and they're like, oh yeah, like I set an appointment and then I go on the appointment. And I think that time between first contact, either setting the appointment in first contact, or at least laying the groundwork for the appointment, hoping that next conversation is going to be the appointment, that moment until the listing appointment, that in my opinion is actually far more critical than, or at least equally as critical as, the actual listing appointment itself. And so how I try to utilize that time is I'll spend a good 20 minutes or as long as I can, really kind of peeling back the layers, as you say, of their motivation and who they are and why is this meaningful and what is causing this move and all those questions. And then we hang up the phone. And then later a couple hours later, send them a text. I'm really looking forward to meeting you guys next Tuesday. And I always try to set my listing appointment 5 to 7 days out from that initial phone conversation, because that gives me 5 to 7 days to do all these things that I'm talking about. So then I send them a text message. And then right behind that, maybe a couple days later, I'll send them an email with some relevant link or a data point or one snapshot of my listing presentation that I can somehow tie back to the conversation that we had, just to reinforce the fact that it's 2 days after our conversation, it's 5 days until we're going to meet. And yet you are still very much on the forefront of my mind, to the point that, oh, when I saw this, I thought of you guys, and here it is, even though we've never met in person yet. And then behind that, I shoot them a text message and say, hey, I'm going to drop a little packet off at your front door, that really just is going to provide the framework of what it looks like to sell, and how I'm going to show up to make sure that I am assisting you and holding your hand through this entire process. And then you drop the packet off at your front door, and then you shoot them a text message and say, hey, I just left that on your front door. Let me, so by the time you show up 5 or 7 days after that initial contact, they feel like they already know you. Like you've already had so many little snippets of encounters and engagements that you're not a stranger to them. They know you. They feel as if they know you, even though they really don't know you any better than they did after that first conversation, but that constant peppering of, hey there, I was thinking of you, what's going, that becomes super meaningful and can totally shift the dynamic at a listing appointment.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, everything that you just said is critical to winning, because what we're talking about right now is low inventory, going on every listing appointment and winning it. Because of the fact that that's one of however many you're going to get for the whole year. So being able to build rapport and show up and know what their motivation is so that you know exactly what to talk. It's going to make your listing presentation easier. It's going to make the close easier. It just shortens the amount of time that you're going to be in their house, because they're going to feel, like Julie said, like they know you. And dropping off the listing packet, pre-listing packet, not mailing it, dropping it off is also important, because I know some agents have said like, oh, I mail it out. You drive to their house. It also gives you an opportunity to drive around the neighborhood if you haven't been there recently, to kind of scope it out, get an idea. It really is important that you're setting yourself up for success by doing the seller questionnaire and going through that pre-qualifying, dropping off the pre-listing packet, and then going on to the next one. Kind of also put in here, and a lot of this stuff, like I said, is what Julie just touched on and what I've learned from her. Because what it comes down to is what she said, is people work with who they like, trust, admire, and respect. And once you build that rapport with them and you've talked to them and you've built that respect and that trust with them, then the listing appointment is going to be easier.
100%. And then I love this here, like call to confirm. And so like, I'm nuts, right? Like I'll call, like if I have an appointment on Thursday, like I'll call Monday afternoon and just be like, hey, like I'm really looking forward to Thursday. I know sometimes, start of a week, all kinds of crazy things pop up. Just want to make sure Thursday's still looking good for you. Great. Wednesday, call. Hey, just making sure we're still good for tomorrow. Like, does that time still work for you? I got some flexibility. If nope. And then an hour before, hey, I'm headed your way. Just, or I don't even like ask if it's okay that time. I just usually send them a text like, hey, headed your way. Can't wait to see you guys. And again, because like just there's little things. I mean, it just really, really makes a difference.
Yeah, it really does. And then from there, doing your homework so that you're prepared. So what Julie said, 5 to 7 days out, that's typically what I do too, because I want to know that I am prepared, that I've studied the comps, that I know the neighborhood, that I am rehearsed with and polished with my presentation. And then you bring everything that you can, because you're going to have those people that are very analytical and that are going to care about that information. Then you're going to have the people that obviously don't care. But having the information is going to set you apart, because I always bring like around here, we have use and occupancy inspections. So I know that if I'm bringing that to the appointment and I'm just going to highlight, hey, just so that you're aware, at the end, this is something that you're going to have to be prepared for. So just make sure that, your smoke detectors work and all that kind of stuff, whatever is on that. And you'd be surprised at how many agents don't tell them about this, or they have no idea if they've interviewed other agents. That can also set you apart. On top of having like the stats and knowing everything about that you need to know about like the local market.
Mm-hmm.
So the appointment, I just put together a few kind of quick tips on the appointment. If you don't have like a listing, I guess, presentation script that you go off, I always like recommend people ask one of your people in the office if you can attend a listing appointment with them. If you're close with them, find someone that you trust. Go on YouTube, because you're going to figure out what works for you. Everyone does it differently. Like I am one that goes through the comps and make sure that I know them, and I will go through them with people if it comes down to price with them, and I know that we're kind of off on pricing. Whereas Julie is amazing. She you don't go through pricing at all. And she closes all that. So
I try not to, yeah, I try not to talk too much about pricing. I mean, it always is going to come up, but what I try to always remind and reinforce in a variety of ways throughout the appointment so that I'm pushing that pricing conversation as far to the end as humanly possible. And I'm already laying the groundwork throughout that appointment to let them know that their house is going to sell for exactly what someone's willing to pay for it. And the things that we can influence and that we can help control the narrative to help drive that price higher are the specialties and the expertises that I bring to the table. And I also try to like remind them that if any agent sits down at their table and tells them like, oh, 100%, I can get you this number, like no doubt, like it's a slam dunk, that's the agent that they should be the very most wary of, because none of us have a crystal ball. None of us have any way to guarantee or predict. And what they should really deeply be thinking about with the agent that they hire is, who do you believe has the strongest market knowledge? Who do you believe is going to communicate, advocate, and negotiate on their behalf in the strongest fashion? Who do they believe has the team and resources to help them prepare and present their house in the most advantageous and leveraged way to the market? All of those things, and then and only then it's price. And if you're not working with an agent that can execute at the highest possible level on all those former things, your price is going to suffer. So that's a lot more my pricing conversation than just, here's what I think we can list for.
Yeah. And it's more about, after you've gotten to that point where you've talked to them multiple times and you've communicated with them, and then you have their motivation, you know what they need, and what's kind of bringing them to this move. Once you get to the appointment, it's much easier to talk to them, and it's more of a conversation than a quote unquote presentation. Like, you're going to go through everything that you do, but you're going to also tailor it to them specifically, which is going to set you apart from somebody else, because you probably haven't seen their house, but you have a good idea of what their house looks like based on comps. You can kind of determine based on how long they've lived there, their age range, stuff like that. And sometimes you're like super surprised and pleasantly surprised. But my one thing is, I always say like to people, show up on time, don't be early, and don't be late, obviously, but don't be early, because they're expecting you at 2:00. You should be there at 2:00 on the dot. Mm-hmm. And thanking them and remembering that while you're with them, you're their guest, not their real estate agent yet. So to just be respectful of them and their house. And when you're walking through with them, to take notes, because it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and the waiter doesn't use a notepad, and you're like, they're definitely not going to get that right. Like, write down things that you notice about the house. That's going to help you once you go to market the house. And it's all about what you want to talk about with your presentation. Like, for me, with my presentation, I talk about today's buyers most of the time, with the fact being like, the buyer that we see the most today is like that HGTV buyer, that buyer that wants everything done for them. They're the millennial. They don't know how to use a screw gun. My husband can't either. Like, they don't have the time or the money to fix their house up. So preparing your house first is crucial in this market. It's something that you cannot look past. And it's one of the most important things that you can do when you're selling nowadays. And that doesn't mean putting $15,000 in to fix it up, but there are a lot of things that you can do that are going to make a really big impact in the eyes of the buyers, but not a huge impact in your wallet. Because I always have this saying, like, most realtors do the 3 Ps, where it's like they put a sign in the yard, put your home on the MLS, and pray that it sells, which I know we've all heard. But I have a different philosophy around the 3 Ps. We prepare it to shine in the best light possible and appeal to the most amount of buyers, price it properly, and present it in the market successfully, with a really great, aggressive marketing strategy that's tailored to your house. So it's just doing things differently.
Yeah. And I actually have stolen that from you. Like, my 3 Ps are different than other people's 3 Ps. And I just think that, like, alliteration and that, like, boiling it down to almost like just a really nicely encapsulated summary, I just think really resonates with people. And also, I think that most listing appointments that you're going to go on, marketing. Well, what does your marketing look like? Like, tell me about your marketing. I really think that taking as many opportunities to connect connect for people. Like, we know it because this is what we do for a living, but the preparation, the time that you spend preparing your home has a direct line correlation to the marketing. You know what I mean? And so I always try to make sure that I say multiple times and in a variety of ways, the pictures that we are able to capture, that is the foundation for any marketing we're going to do. And so for every additional amount of time, energy, effort that you spend preparing your home, you're going to get it back in spades on the other side of things, because you absolutely never get a second chance to make a first impression in real estate. And so speed to market is far less important than ensuring that we have properly prepared, because without proper preparation, that presentation is going to suffer. And if preparation and presentation suffer, then we know for sure price is going to suffer.
Yeah, because like you can only do so much marketing to get that person to your house, because your first showing is always online. But once they get to your house, that's you have to sell twice, right? Online, and then when they get to your house. And if your home's not prepared, if it's not clean, if it has, scuffs and dings and stuff like that everywhere, then our marketing doesn't matter, because it really comes down to how your house presents to those people. So yeah, it's definitely crucial. That's one of the big things, especially in a shifting market, which we're in, where a lot of agents for the last few years would take their iPhone photos and put it up and call it a day. And you just can't do that. I mean, you can't do it ever, but you can't do it now, especially. And I always like to tell people too, with marketing, like, all agents, well, at least the high performing ones, are going to do the same thing, right? They're going to take professional photos, take professional videography. They're going to do all the marketing things, have the professional like flyers and brochures. And some of them will take it up a notch. Like, I send out just listed postcards to the neighborhood, and I make sure that I have, a mega open house for the neighbors. And I make a property website, and I do paid ads. But what I tell my sellers and the people that I go on these appointments with is I show them proof sources of, I'm going to show you what I actually paid on this marketing for, like, when I order my postcards and when I do my ads, so that I can give you an actual number. Because agents say they'll do X, Y, and Z all the time, but do they do it? Probably not, especially in our market that we were in. So being transparent there and saying, like, I will show you what I pay on Facebook ads, on Instagram, on boosts and stuff like that. And they can obviously see that when I send the postcards, they get a postcard in the mail, or if I do door hangers, inviting them to an actual, open house event, it's tangible, and they can actually see that and know that I'm doing the marketing instead of just saying I'm doing the marketing. Let me see. I think we have.
Hey, Julie, sorry to interrupt you. I know one of the things, and I feel like we maybe breeze through this really quickly. One of the things that a lot of people that joined this class asked about was scripts for this listing presentation. I know you and Alex mentioned sometimes, oh, are you coming to this next? Maybe. Okay. This is what I was going to ask us to slow down about, but looks like that's where we're going next.
Yeah, because scripts, like, you kind of are going to follow your listing presentation and and obviously what you've already talked to them about in the pre-list or in the pre-qualifying, and then up to that point. And it's super important that you do not practice your script on your sellers. So many people are like, I've got this, I'm going to nail this presentation, and they've never practiced their presentation ever, and you're going to lose it because you're going to fall over yourself. I'm going to be honest, in the beginning, like, of my resale journey 5 years ago, I lost, and I still remember to this day, 2 listings to Julie. And now that I know her, I'm like, I know why.
Did I know this?
I don't think so, but I'm like, I know why now, obviously, because she, is just a powerhouse and is very prepared. But back then, when I was scripted, I wasn't doing it properly. I wasn't getting to know them ahead of time. I wasn't doing that pre-qualifying. And I think it's something that you just learn from experience and from being around people that do it at such a high level. Because, you have the people that are juggling buyers and sellers at the same time, and buyers it takes more time, and it's just a longer experience. Whereas sellers, if you nail that first like 2 weeks with them, it's so much easier, and because listings are, you can leverage your business with listings.
Yeah. I feel like I just feel like the language of scripts, like just that word, I feel like gets a bad reputation. I mean, you'll see it all over, the real estate groups on Facebook. Like, I don't want to be scripted with my clients. And here's how I think of scripts. I always think of it in the framework of a teacher, right? Like if a teacher is a brand new teacher and they go in and they're teaching, English lit or whatever the class is in year one, they have 9.5 months, 180 days with their student to give their class material to teach. And then it's summer. And then when they come back in year two, they have a whole group of new students and they have 180 days with those folks too. But they're going to draw on their past experience from last year, and they're going to refine the lesson plans that they know worked. They're going to refine and reuse the methods of teaching for particular subject matter throughout that year that they know worked. And the ones that just fell flat with their students, they're probably going to drop. And so by the time that teacher is teaching in their 5th, 6th, or 7th year, they have a script for that class. And it has been well refined over many years of 180 days with new groups of students, new groups of students, new groups of students. In essence, we are these folks' teachers because we do this every day. The difference is that we only get precious few moments with these folks to deliver the most impactful, teaching to them. Like we don't get 180 days, you know what I mean? Like we don't get that. We get maybe 2 hours if they're super chatty, maybe 1, so to just know what the most commonly asked questions are, the most frequently asked questions, and to know that the way you deliver that answer is clear and concise, and that you are ready and able to field whatever questions or objections they might volley back at you. Additionally, being practiced in that allows you to not be thinking about what you're going to say and to just be fully present in the moment to listen with your whole self. And I think that actually being practiced in what you're going to say and how to answer these questions, it actually allows you the freedom to show up in a more genuine way for your clients. So what people misinterpret as disingenuous, I actually just think is the structure that gives us the freedom to show up in a more genuine way. Sorry, my phone's not on silent.
That's exactly it. I think for everybody, it's going to be different. It's going to be based on what you find works for you. And that's why I think going along with someone, if you're newer, to see multiple listing presentations and seeing how these people handle their listing presentations, if they allow you to, or with YouTube and the amount of stuff that's on there, seeing what those people might do differently, like doing your homework and really just like getting into it and taking the time to listen to podcasts and go on YouTube. And it's really going to form your listing presentation once you've figured out what works for you. And then at that point, like what I do, and everyone's different, but I'm like psycho. When I first did it, I wrote it all down on like a Word document, and I've edited it over the years when I find something else that I think, oh, that would be a good thing. And that's something that I continue to practice. I practice on my husband. He loves it. I practice it on other coworkers if I have new things that come up, or somebody that I know is going to come at me with like some good objections. And I know that I have something that I can always look back at if I need a refresher. But it's always going to be something that you need to really tailor to yourself. There's no one listing presentation for everybody, which is why I feel like every listing presentation is different. And it also is different with the market too. So I guess if there is, for the scripts, or we'll go back, hold on. Julie, if you could pick 2 of these objections that you get the most and how you overcome them or handle them, what would you say your 2 are that you're like, I will combat that and I would love to?
Sure. I think that the first two on that list are so closely related that we like it would probably be a very similar answer.
Yeah.
So why don't we do this? Why don't I kind of share with you that? And in the meantime, if everybody wants to drop in the chat which one they're curious about, we can unpack the second one
Together.
that the group wants to hear about the most. Um,
Yeah.
So when it comes to like using a discount agent versus me, or whether or not I'm going to discount my commission for folks, I think so much of that depends on what type of personality. You know, Alex and I are both with Keller Williams. Keller Williams very much, you know, like focuses on people's like disc profile, like, right? Are they highly personable? Do they want to chat? Like, are they more dominant and they just want facts and figures and they're fast and they don't want a lot of fluff? Like, what type of personality are they? So I think that trying to like kind of understand who that person is shifts a little bit how I answer that question. But generally I answer it in two ways, right? The first way is to say, listen, like I completely understand what I'm hearing you say about the attractiveness of a Redfin or a Hauser agent and that flat 1% commission that they're offering is that at $500,000 sale price, that's quote unquote saving you $10,000. And my God, who would not be super, super compelled to save 10 grand? And I just would encourage you to think about, and I would love to just show you the hard facts on these numbers about the fact that that $10,000 is wholly dependent on you getting 500. But what if we could get you 510 or 520 or 525? The deal with those type of agents is very often, sorry if there's any Redfin or Hauser agents out there, I apologize, but you know, like those flat rate commission folks, like they get a salary. Of course they get bonuses on the work that they close. But for me, I don't get a paycheck. I don't get one penny unless and until I sell your house. So I firmly believe that the level of dedication and scrappiness that you're going to get from me to get this job done and to get it done at the highest number humanly possible, it's just a guaranteed paycheck versus not having a paycheck at all. It changes the way people work. I don't care what level of integrity people believe they have. That's a game changer. That's number one. And then the second way that I handle it is, well, you know, this other agent said that they would drop their commission rate till 5%. And I'm like, really? That's really fascinating to me. So let me ask you, did you have to like fight with them about that? Or like, how did you possibly convince them to do that? That's a lot. That's a huge drop. Like, how did you possibly convince them to drop their commission, their paycheck, how they feed their family? Like, how did you convince them? Like, I really kind of build it up like, holy shit, you must be an amazing negotiator, right? And most times people don't realize that that's why you're asking. And they say, oh, I didn't. I mean, they just offered it. I'm like, really? Well, I mean, that's really interesting to me because that's the money that they're going to turn around and use to like put a roof over their head, like pay tuition, pay car payment, like feed their kids, like go on vacation, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they just offered that money up. They just offered it to you without any kind of negotiating or haggling or provocation of any kind. Man, if that's their own family's money on the table, how hard do you think they're going to fight for an extra 15 or 20 grand for your money? I mean, that 10 grand extra is super meaningful to you. It's only going to turn around and put an extra $200 or $300 in their pocket. Do you think they're going to fight hard for that? I mean, I don't know. I would just really consider and encourage you to think about the fact if they're giving their own money away that easily, how hard are they going to fight for yours?
Yeah. And a lot of people, consumers don't realize what the good high performing listing agents do, right? Is like when we're with buyers out there, we're going and like a house will go on the market and in one day it's off the market and that's it. And no one was told anything or whatever it may be. And I always use an example like, hey, there are listing agents and they'll sell your house. They'll get you maybe the number you want, but what if I could get you more? What if I could tell you that, you know, what most agents don't do, I do. I take that extra time. When we get an offer, if we have 2 offers, I call the other offer. I make sure that they know that there's another offer on the table. And I say, you know, you're a little close. Can your guys come up? Because we all know that buyers will get invested and they might say that this is their best and final, but maybe they'll come up. Or negotiating when there's no offers on the table and this one comes in and it's a lowball offer. And the things that you do differently in those instances are what sets you apart and what gives you, like, what changes the commission for you rather than using someone who's on salary. Because kind of like, it's like what you said before, like if someone, what did you say? If someone came in to your job and would do it for $40,000 less, do you think they'd do as good of a job as you do? Like,
Yep.
probably not.
Right.
So, the moral of the story, I like to use examples for some people because I feel like the average consumer doesn't gather what the difference is with what we do and how we do it differently, because they think that everything that is shown on HGTV makes it look so easy, and on Netflix now, with Selling Sunset.
Oh my God.
It's horrible. Not to mention the outfits. Everyone said we're interviewing other agents, which really comes down to like the clothes too, I think is what, which I get that quite a lot. So what's
Yeah.
your top track?
Yeah. So I think when it comes down to interviewing multiple agents, I think that really comes down to asking a lot of questions. So yeah, I absolutely get it. Listen, like assuming that this conversation is being dropped on me at the end of our listing presentation, right? So like we've already had the whole listing presentation. I feel like we really hit it off. I feel like we have a good amount of rapport. And then they're like, well, you know, we are interviewing 2 other agents later this week. Okay. Listen, like I really respect that. I mean, frankly, I'm always surprised to hear that people aren't interviewing multiple agents. This is for most folks the single purchase that they have the vast majority of their wealth wrapped up in. Of course, you should not, you know, like I interview multiple folks to see who's going to cut my lawn every season. You know what I mean? Like, of course, you should figure out who's the best qualified for the job. So I'm curious to know, is there something specific that you're looking to hear from an agent that's really going to let you know that they're the agent for you? It's interesting the way people kind of don't know how to answer that, or it at least causes them to think, I mean, no, like we really haven't thought about that, you know? I don't typically go through like my stats like while I'm sitting there, but I do just point it out in my listing presentation. And so at that moment, that's an opportunity to show your stats. And then in my listing presentation, I also have questions that you should answer, that you should ask if you're interviewing multiple agents, and you could kind of review some of those. And so then assuming that conversation unfolds as it typically does, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're just going to know. Okay, well, I mean, I feel like we've really hit it off. And what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that I want this job and I want very much to work hard for you. And I am supremely confident that I am the best positioned to get you the most amount of money for this house, to do it in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassles, and to really hold your hand and help you navigate all that this like winding path can bring up. So again, I really respect you want to interview other agents, but why don't we do this? Why don't we just do all this paperwork right now? When did you say, because I'm confident. I feel like we really like each other. I think you have a lot of, you know, I think that you're 100% comfortable and confident that I'm the man for the job, you know, that my marketing is what it's supposed to be, that our pricing strategy that we just built out together is on point. Go through those. How about we just fill out all this paperwork right now? What did you say? You're interviewing 1 agent on Tuesday and 1 on Wednesday? Fantastic. See right here on page 2 where it says this contract commences and ends. What we're going to do is let's just put Thursday at 8 o'clock at night down here. Okay. That gives you Tuesday to interview, Wednesday to interview, and it gives you a full more than 24 hours to just give some thought to whether or not you still believe as I feel like we do now, that I'm the right person for this job. And look, if you decide not, okay, we tear up the contract, we go our separate ways, and I'll remain available to assist you in any way possible. However, if Thursday comes along and you're like, yeah, you know what, Julie's the one, let's go. We're ready. I can hit the ground running and begin working. We're not going back to the drawing board to get silly paperwork filled out. That's how I typically leave with the listing contract side.
Yeah, no, I love that. Everything that you said was just, it's perfect. So that's,
I am often too long-winded. That's like my biggest thing. So like my hardest audience to be with are people that are very,
like to the point, and yes.
yes. And like, they don't just want any fluff. They just want boom. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, those are my tough people because I over explain.
No, I think I'm the same way. And I always bring everything with me so that I am prepared, so that I can close multiple times throughout and then just say, and if they've interviewed other agents, is there anything that they said that they would do that I didn't hit on, or that I didn't talk about, or that isn't in my packet? And I feel like once especially with that one, if you've pre-qualified them and you've talked to them, you already know that they are interviewing multiple agents most of the time.
Mhm.
So you've already had kind of a conversation around it. It kind of feeds into why being more prepared and doing the pre-qualifying is so important.
Yeah,
So,
and I agree. I think like the deeper you can get in that pre-qualifying, one of the questions that I absolutely never skip in my pre-qualifying is, what's the number that you guys have? Like, if I could get you this number tomorrow, you're like, Jewel, I'm out. I will be out in 5 days if they need me to be. Like, what is the number that makes you excited at the prospect of selling this house? And what is the number that you feel is, like the realistic number? Like, what do those numbers look like for you? And because I really just like to, I like to be able to, like if they're saying 600,000 and they live in a $250,000 neighborhood and they want that extra 400 because they put a gazebo in the back from IKEA, we got problems. You know what I mean? Like we got some problems. There's a lot of ground to cover there. There's a huge gap to bridge. So I like to just know that the comps that I'm bringing, either support or really give excellent evidence to the contrary of where their head's at, so knowing what their expectation is,
yeah, I think that's,
what does this one say? Is they begin to, what,
stone.
what if they begin, yeah, I mean, look, like if that happens and, and again, like so much of that is just fine tuning your ability to read the room, which again, being able to be calm and a little zen-like in those listing appointments because you're not worried or nervous about getting stumped with a question, that is going to allow you to tune into them and be able to read the room better. So if you misjudged that and they get their back up and really kind of stonewall you at this point, just be like, totally got it. It's just a suggestion. No worries. Here's what I would ask, please. If over these next 2 days, when you're interviewing these other agents, it's very similar to what Alex said. If anything at all should pop up that you find interesting or compelling, that is not something that we covered today, like, please let's talk about it, because it is highly probable that it's something I'm either already doing and we just didn't get a chance to talk about it today because we really covered a lot of ground. And if all other things being equal, I would have gotten that job. And before you make a decision, like if there's anything at all, just like I told you, I'm going to go back to every buyer on the market, everybody that showed your house, let them know that we have an offer in hand, let them know that now is the chance if they want to consider it to bring us like I'm really going to go back and like push the market and try to finesse the buyers on the market to get us where we want to be. Like, don't just be a one and done, like have conversations. Like, let's see if we can't really, I would love to work with you to get you everything that you want in listing your property.
Yeah.
And then I leave and I already in my packet that I bring. So on the front seat of my car, I already have an addressed, stamped envelope. I drive a block down, write a thank you note, and I drop it in the mail before I even, like, at the first possible mailbox that I pass, so that I get as close as possible to ensuring that before they have that, maybe not their next interview, but before they have that last and third interview, um, that they've already received my thank you card.
Yeah. Having that follow up and setting the expectations
Oh,
and
there you have it right there. Yeah.
yeah, and then calling to see if they have any questions, and you can call and how did the other interview go? Just don't worry about having those hard conversations. Just following up is, if you haven't gotten the signed listing contract, or even if you have and they're still having, like what you said, they're still interviewing agents, is super important, because again, the average agent doesn't do that. So you have to be very focused on bringing to them the value of, you have to show them what you're going to do too. The follow-up is kind of partially giving them an insight into what you're going to be doing working with them, because everything you've got done leading up to that point, plus the follow-up, is probably so very different than the other agents that they're interviewing. And it's going to set you apart so much that they have no other choice but to go with you, because you've done so much more work to get this appointment, leading up to it, and then following up from this appointment, that it's a no-brainer to them that they're going to go with you.
And I also see that somebody in the chat put Julie, we all need that confidence. Her name also happens to be Julie. And Alex knows me pretty well, and she'll attest to the fact that I'm not that confident. Like, I literally am having like a nervous breakdown every day, like convinced that today's the day that all the balls are going to come crashing down around me. But what I do believe with every fiber of my being is that I will bend over backwards, and that my clients are so critically important to me, and that I don't promise what I can get them in price. I don't make a lot of promises, but the one promise I always do, and again, if this is that pivot, like if they don't won't sign, a promise that I typically make is, look, like, I feel like realtors get a bad name, and it's typically because when something happens or something doesn't, go as planned or as expected, most real estate agents will just go dark on you, and you don't even know what's happening. So I can't promise you that everything's going to go smooth. I wish I could make all those promises, but the one thing that I can promise you is, if any hiccup happens at any point during this transaction, that is when you're going to be talking to me twice as much, not half as often. Because it's not that I have, it's just the confidence is not necessarily in myself. It's the fact that, like, I am confident that I will not drop communication, and that they will be and continue to be critically important. I am going to treat them as if they were my family. And I know that I do that. I have 500 past clients, like, most of whom attest to the fact that I do that. So it's not that, it's just it's the confidence that I know what I've promised and what I've said is what I'm going to deliver.
Yep. No, I think you are a powerhouse, and you're wonderful at what you do. But again, it comes from having the conversations over and over again, and knowing what you said, the scripts, like knowing, I think the most important part of scripts and script practice is the objection part of it. Because you can tailor your listing presentation around that client and that seller, but knowing if anything comes your way that that's going to be some sort of objection, that you can handle it, is what gives you a little bit more confidence in that situation. And before we open up to questions, I always like to just point out to leverage your listings to get more business, because you can get more business from every listing. If you've already gotten that listing, create an experience, which is what Julie said, like to get referrals, like treat them like family, know that you can communicate with them, and that you're going to take them through what is probably the largest like asset of their life, and selling it and putting them at ease, and keeping them informed throughout the process is huge. Holding mega open houses so that you invite the neighbors, because if the neighbors see that you're doing all of this and there's so much action around their house. If they're even slightly thinking about moving, you're going to be on their radar. Sending those pick your neighbor postcards, dropping off small branded gifts to the closest neighbors. I always drop off a pre-listing like package to the buyers to make it, or to the sellers throughout. And then I send them like moving labels once we're under contract. And then I drop off a bottle of wine once we get to closer to settlement. So I make it a whole experience, because we know buyers get that, but sellers not as much.
Yeah. And in the days that if inspections ever come back with regularity, I used to send my clients a QR code to Starbucks so they could grab a coffee when they're out of the house while inspections are happening. So all those little silly things, I mean, they're just little. I mean, they really don't even cost much, but it just, again, it just allows your clients to know that you're thinking of them in a lot more personal of a way and empathetic of a way and caring of a way than just a transaction. No one wants to feel like that. And I think all of this also comes down to just, being genuine, being earnest, being you. There's some agents that in our market that are just super smooth and super polished, and I'm not. I talk too much, you know what I mean? Sometimes I drop foul language, you know what I mean? But like, I just lean into who I am. I may not be for everyone, but for the folks that I am for, I want them to see my genuine self. I don't want to have put on a facade because that's what I think they're looking for. Like, there's people out there that are looking for me. Might not be everybody, but you know what I mean? And that just makes everything easier as well.
Yeah. Oh no, it does. I love that. So yeah, that's, I put this in here. Don't practice your presentation, be polished, prepared, professional. Small talk is important. Don't forget to listen. Those two, seem like but they go in hand. Know your numbers and follow up. Is there anything that you would add, Julie?
The thing that I would just add, which I think is like, again, I talk too much, so it's the constant mantra for my life is, it's just the person doing the talking is the person that's doing the bonding. You know what I mean? So if you're doing a lot of the talking, you might feel like that was great. We like totally hit it off. You know what I mean? But like, they might not feel the same way. So like, if you can really get to a point where like you're like the homeowners are doing more than 50% of the talking, then they're probably the ones feeling like, wow, we loved her. She was so great. See, that's why the questions and the going 2 and 3 levels deep, I just think is so, so important.
Yeah. And I think someone told me once, and I never forgot it. When you ask a question, pause and wait 5 seconds. Like, people are so scared of that awkward silence that they'll just continue or they'll ask another question, or they'll go into something else, but wait, because they have to think about their answer. And then that'll really help you too with really figuring out what their motivation is. Having, especially the older generation, they love to like talk about their family. That like, I love what you said about the person talking is the one that genuinely
Doing the bonding. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great.
And to your point, somebody that I learned from, like when I first got my license, used to say 2 things to me, both of which always made me laugh. She would say, Julie, just give them blah, stop giving them blah, blah, blah. And she would also say to me, let the silence do the heavy lifting, right? So like, when you deliver that thing about, if they're going to give away their money that quickly, what makes you think they're not going to give away yours? Let that silence linger until it is deeply uncomfortable. Like, do not be the first one to talk after you drop something like that on them. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, silence is okay.
It is. I feel like most people they get so uncomfortable by the silence, but it is. All right, open up. Does anyone have any questions about anything? I think Julie has a few minutes until she has to hop off. So if there's anything, write it in the comments. And then we'll post this, so you can always go back and replay it on YouTube, and send you a copy as well.
And I'll put my email address in here in case anybody has any questions like that they think of later. Like, for me, I'm happy to answer them.
And you know how to find us. So if you have any questions about anything, you can always email us, or really, we have a text line as well. well, let me see if there's any. Thank you,
Wow, no
Julie, so
question.
much for, I mean, you answered so much. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And yeah, I think if anyone needs
Awesome.
anything,
Nope.
thank you.
Always my pleasure. Thanks so much, Alex.